So the first thing you're going to realize if you haven't installed the 2011 version is the properties dialog box that we have up here in the corner. When I grab this and drag it out, it's kind of a floating window. We can dock it left or right. We can actually have it on a dual screen, and it does support the dual screen setup. So if I close my Revit down and launch it tomorrow, it's going to remember where it was on the second screen. I usually like it docked over on the side here, but with my screen resolution down, I'm going to put it back to the initial location. But before I do that, if you don't like it, I guess the only thing you have to do is kind of live with it. And the reason why I say that is if I close this down and I go and select an object and I come over here to the element properties or the type properties box, it's going to pop right back up. So wherever you were, it's going to remember where that is. So you can turn it off, but it automatically pops back up when you need it. Now, in the initial state that it's in, it's looking at the view properties of the view that I'm currently in. So it's looking at level 1. And if I go off and again select an item, it'll pop over and show me the information there. And then we have the edit type button, which will pop into the type dialog box. Now, unfortunately, this particular box doesn't give you the ability to change sizes yet. Hopefully in the future they'll give us that ability. I found a couple of unique things about this one. When you cross over a bunch of things, and let's say that I want to grab the rooms out of this, typically our workflow would come up here over to filters. Under the filters box, filter out just the rooms, and then go ahead and make your changes to the element properties. Well, what we can do now, step through that process again, grab everything, and we have a drop-down list of all the items that we selected, and we can come down here and grab rooms and make changes to the room information from there. So we don't have to always use that filter box. We can quickly go off and grab things from the drop-down. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and it takes kind of a video hit, is when you select an item and you make a change to it, notice the apply button right here. When I move my mouse away, watch what happens to that apply button. It automatically made that change to the elements that I selected. So you have to be kind of cautious and careful when you're moving around that box. If you move outside that box, it automatically applies whatever changes you made, which may not be what you wanted. So just a little heads up for that. They did make some changes to the quick access toolbar, which is, remember, this toolbar up on top here. We still have the ability to go off and right click and add information to the bar. But one of the problems that we had with this was, arranging them in the order that we would like to see them. So they've given us the ability now within the dialog box to make some adjustments to that. So here's that wall that I created, and I can move it up and down. I can actually add dividers to it as well. And when I say OK, there's my nice little button. And of course, if I don't like it, I could always come back here and delete it from here if I wanted to. Now, the quick access bar in the 2010 version allowed you to have 2 different access bars for project and for families. Now we just have the one. So we have one access bar that pretty much governs both environments that we're in. One of the things that we did, at least hopefully we did on the access bar, was put up our options and our work set drop downs up there. And what they've done in the 2011 version is down here at the bottom they've added those too. Now I'd like to give them a little bit more room than what they've given us, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and adjust that information. So right here I'm allowed to go off and just kind of switch from, again, my design options to another, or I do have my design options button that I can go off and click into. So that's kind of a nice improvement. That's real estate down there that we really weren't using a lot of. And then the ribbon. I know a lot of people didn't like the ribbon, and to be honest with you, the ribbon was pretty glitchy based upon different things that you were trying to do, and sometimes you pick a button and it wouldn't swap over, and they've made some great improvements on that, and it's really a true ribbon now for one thing. But the other thing they've done is consistently made the modify tools in the same location. So if you look at my modify tools, right in the middle I've got my copy, rotate commands. So when I go off and I select an object like the grid, what's going to happen is those tools are going to remain in the same location, And then over here on the far right side are those things that are related to the item that I've selected. So if I go off and I select a wall, you can see these are things that were related to the wall that I can modify. And if I grab a door, the same type of thing. Now the one thing that I did notice a little differently is floor. So I'm going to go and filter this out and grab a floor. And actually I shouldn't say floors, I should say more sketches. So when I go off and I edit a boundary, you know, before in 2009 we used to come way over here and hit finish sketch, and then in 2010 we went to come over on the right side and do it, and now what they've done is they put it right here in the front of that area. So again, it's another reprogramming of our minds to go ahead and finish or cancel our sketches. And just a couple more little things here, just more talking points. We have the ability now to right click and repeat our last command. We have a listing of commands we can do, and we can hit enter on the keyboard, which will repeat the last command as well. In this case it was editing the floor. And then the last piece on the interface is, in the olden days we would pick an item and then we'd say we want to copy and move it and rotate it. Now we can actually do this under the modify tool, and this is really more for the new users to keep the AutoCAD workflow. I can grab the copy button, tell it what I want to copy, and then copy that over. So it's more of a workflow for, I think, the newer users and the people that swap back and forth between AutoCAD and Revit. Alright, so some of the meat and potatoes here. For those people that have the subscription, you have the ability to download the structural, or what they call the Advantage Pack. And what they've done is they've added some of those Advantage Packs tools into the 2011 version. So if you didn't have the service pack or you didn't have the subscription, you now have the ability to use structural tools the way that the structural engineer is using them, minus the fact that you don't have the analytical model piece. So what we have now is we have decking, we have coping, we have slanted columns, which is something that's new in the 2011 version of Revit Structure. We have a truss wizard. Now we have a truss family that we can create our own trusses, and they enhanced that in the 2011 version as well. We now have curved beams. We have a beam system removal. So we had beam systems before, but it's kind of, think of that as like an exploding of a system. So what I want to do is take this beam system and knock it down to individual pieces. We now have the ability to do that now. And then some small enhancements that they've done. We have the 3D Align tool, which basically allows me to line stuff up in 3D now, which is a little bit harder it was really kind of hard to do back in the olden days. We have the ability to swap out model lines to detail lines and back again. And what that means is if I draw a model line and I really want that model line to be a detail line, I have a tool now to swap that out. Or vice versa, if I have a detail line that I really want to be a model line, I can swap that out. We have conditional formatting. So basically we can create a schedule and we can look for things that either meet or don't meet particular standards and have them called out. We have reporting parameters under the family section. Now think of reporting parameters as instance parameters. If you're familiar with the families, we have types and instance parameters. This is an instance parameter that doesn't drive geometry, that is driven by other parameters. And then we have the DWG fidelity, and basically what that's saying is when we plot out, or we plot DWGs, or we plot out or export out the DWG, they've increased the fidelity and the purpose of that. So they were always working on that type of thing. And then split wall gaps. This is something that was part of the Advantage Pack as well in 2010. And what this is have you ever wanted to split a wall and then have a little gap in there, and if you did that and you try to drag it back together, what happens, kind of healed it up. So now we have the ability to actually specify a spacing gap between those. Some great improvements to text. Now on the text side of things, you know, it's not MText and it's not Word. So we just got to kind of keep that in mind, that it's just like MText back in the AutoCAD days. It took forever to get to where it's at today. And I think we're in the same boat here when it comes to text and Revit. It just, every release, I think they're just going to be trying to work on different functionality for our text. We have a sheet list now. So when we create our sheet list in the past, it would just be whatever the sheets that we had already created. Now we actually can go create a bunch of sheet information before we create the sheets, and that way it's easier for us to assign our consultant information to that when we get the information. And then sheet grid guides. This is something that's been indicated as a request. I think it's not quite 100% there where I'd like to see it, but it is a nice little tool that you can set up, and you can save this information so you can apply it to different sheets or sheets to sheets. That way we can have our floor plans and our things line up exactly, kind of like our light table in the old days. And then there's some great improvements on the conceptual design side of things. We have a dissolve feature, which allows me to take a mass that we've created and basically dissolve it down to the sketches. We also have the ability to create what they call a work plane viewer. So we have a dialog box that pops up now that gives us the plan view of the current sketch plane that we're on. It's not saved or anything like that, so it's kind of a nice little feature. And then we have the ability to do solid cuts. Think about, in the olden days, what we would do is we would create a void, and then after we created the void, we would come back and add a solid to that area. Now we can just do it all at one time. And then surface rationalization. Surface rationalization, think about in the 2010 version, we have the ability to add the divided surfaces, but they were based upon the U and the V's. Now we can actually create our own location of where those lines are going to be at. And within that, we're also allowed to create what they call an adaptive component. Now, I've only touched the surface on what this particular piece can do, but it's a really amazing thing. I got a couple slides at the end that you'll see how that thing works. So let's take a look at some of these things here. I'm going to start off with our floor. Sorry, I wasn't used to that bar right there, so let me do that. Go the old-fashioned way. All right, so here we have our floor, and we actually have the floor system. So what I'm going to do is rotate the floor so it's actually looking the right way. So under our annotations tab, at the very end we have symbols, and we have a span direction symbol. Now all you need to do is pick your floor, tell it where the span direction is going to be at. You pick your span direction, and then right here we have a line perpendicular, and then we just pick where it's going to be perpendicular to, and you can see what happened is it actually rotated my floor information. Now this is actually just a sketch profile, so if we go and take a look at this, when we look at the properties of this, it's really just a profile that we've loaded in, and we can swap out the different looks and feels to that. Okay. Slanted columns, you're going to find that under your home tool. We've got columns. Remember, we have our structural columns and architectural columns. We're going to grab the structural column, and then right here we have either vertical or slanted. I'm going to do a slanted one, and I already had it set up here, so all I need to do is pick my grid where I want it to go, and basically created that slanted column based upon that distance. So if I go look at this in my section view, you see that I got a nice little slanted column. We can adjust this by gripping it, dragging along the line. We can actually drag it up or down from that location, or type in the numbers that we want as well for that. Now, if you're familiar with any of the structural components, right now it's a stick figure, and that's pretty much how they like to work. But down at the very bottom we have our coarse, medium, and fine. So if we set that up to either medium or fine, we're actually going to see the actual geometry itself. Now, these end types we're also allowed to make changes to as well. So under here in my property box, we have the ability to set up perpendicular, which is what they're at, or I can say I want the base to be horizontal, and let's go and say the top to be vertical, so you can see the differences. And again, as I move my mouse outside the property element box, we'll see those shapes. So now we have the ability to do slanted columns. Let's look at our conditional formatting. So I'm going to go do a schedule here, just a very simple schedule of rooms. So I'm going to go and get the number, the name, and I want the area. And I'm going to come over here to my formatting tab. And under my formatting tab, we have conditional formats. Name and number has really the same type of formats where we can say equal to or not equal to. But area has a little bit different information. So if I come over here and look at the conditional formatting for area, we have the ability to say between, not between, equal to, less than. I'm going to use less than and greater than. I'm going to say let's go ahead and make it, let's look for things that are under 100 square foot. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Oops, before I do that, I'm going to change the background color so it pops out on my screen. Something nice and bright. There we go. So you can see that we have a couple little items, at least in this particular view, that are either 100 square feet or below. If I grab my janitor's room and I hit highlight and model and have it go open up a view that's there. There we go. So there's my room. I'm going to tile my views here. Talking about this row right here, so keep this in mind and just kind of watch it as we go. If I take this wall and I drag it so that square footage is more than 100 feet, you're going to notice that conditional formatting disappears. So it's a great little way of checking balances and verifying information within our schedules. Let's look at our formatting of our text. So first off the bat, when you select a piece of text, whether it's your leader or your text, we have now the ability to set up a style that has a border and then the actual offset of the border. I'm going to give it a 1/4 inch here. And okay, so you can see now I have a border, so when I pick out the space, I have a nice little border running around my boundaries. And then we have the ability to adjust the leaders. So over here on my formatting tab, I can say that I want it to be up on top. I also want to have one on the left-hand side, and let's make that in the middle. And then over here I can adjust where this is pointing at. And then the information inside, we can highlight it, and in our formatting tab, we do have the ability to set up bullets, numbers, letters, uppercase and lowercase. Go and do numbers here for that one. So a little bit of improvement. I did notice that we can't have a spacing here. So if I hit a return and I wanted it to be something below, and I actually added this one as that format, numbers, it starts off with a new one. It won't go off and say it's number 5 because 5 is above that. So like I said, it's starting to work, but again, it's a long way from our M text. Sheet lists. There we go. So under the sheet list, here's a couple sheets that I have in my current browser, so you can see them right there. I want to go and add some sheets to it. So up on top here we have a new, so I'm just going to go and add 2 of those. And then I'm going to go ahead and say this is for my mechanical. Structure. And save time without typing anything in there. So once we have these set up, when we come over here to create new sheets, we just simply right click, new sheet, and then down at the bottom of the box here, we now have the ability to grab any of those placeholders. So we can create a new sheet, or we can grab any one of these based upon the title block and create them. Or if we're going to use the same title block for a group of them, we just grab the group and we say OK to that. And what it's going to do is create those sheets for us automatically. So think about how much time we've spent and how heavy our template files can be with all these different types of sheets that we have in there. And now we can have just a schedule that holds this information, and then when we need it, we can drop it in. And then remember, schedules can be transferred back and forth. get into some of the massing stuff. Alright, this is a simple little block. And what I want to do is I want to sketch on this particular face and see it. Now if I go to my top view, I don't really necessarily see the whole face of that. So what I can do here is hit set my work plane to be on that particular face, and now we have a little viewer button. What that does is brings up a little dialog box and shows you the actual face of that. In inventor terms, this is a function they call look at, so we can pick a face and look at it. So now what I can do is I can actually sketch with inside this, and it shows me in purple the face that I'm actually working on. So I can go ahead and just finish this one off here. And there's my face. Now I can, again, I'm going to grab that little edge right there. And remember, pushing and pulling capabilities with our masking and stuff. What I want to do is I want to cut this piece out. So what I'm going to do is come over here to my Modify tools, and then we have our cut option, and the process is pick what stays and what gets cut away. So you can see now I kind of have a cut, and what I'll do is I'll grab this piece here and I'll change it over to the X-ray mode. That's something that came in the 2010 version. And you can see that it cut that, but it also left that geometry there for us. So I have a nice little shape here, and I actually want to knock it down a bit and get in there and edit my sketches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissolve it. We're going to pick it, and then up on top here under our forms, we're going to hit dissolve. And what that does is knocks all of that information down to our sketch area. So I can come in here and I can actually delete my sketch for that middle piece, and then grab these again and recreate my form. So you can see a nice little form there. And the other thing they've done is given us the ability to edit sketches. So if I pick up on the top area here, I now can come up here to my edit profile or edit, and I can come in here and start editing my sketches now. In the past, this was kind of a tough thing to do and get to. So now I can actually change and work inside that information. I'm going to go ahead and drop this back to where I started. All right. So in 2010, they gave us the ability to create divided surfaces. And again, those divided surfaces were based upon our U and our V, and I kind of call it X and Y, if you will, vertical and horizontal. But let's say that I want to create a different shape and form. We have that ability in the 2011 products. In my south view here, what I've done is I've created a plane, and I drew some model lines here. And what I want to do is I want to take these model lines that I have, and I want to create a pattern of those. So I'm going to go and grab this one, and then under the area here, and this will just be a button if you have a larger resolution, called intersect. And all I'm going to do is just grab these lines right here and say go ahead and create that intersection for me. So you can see now I have a nice little divided surface that I can go off and I can apply a pattern to. I'm going to go and apply one with a curtain system that I put on there. There we go. Now I have found a couple issues with the divided patterns in the earlier version and this version as well, and there's a couple things that we can do to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and close that one down and get into one that. So on those side pieces right here, how would I go off and add that information in there? And the same thing would be for the one that it just created. If it doesn't create the shape that I want, I have the ability here in my pattern to go off and say, don't show the borders, empty those borders, and I'll go off and create one. Well, in the past, it was kind of hard to create that. Well, now we have this adaptive component that we can create. Now, adaptive component, there's a bunch of different things we can do with them. This particular one is a curtain panel that has 3 points to it. So what you have the ability to do is pick your own points. It's not only going to be this shape, but it's going to be whatever shape 3 points make. So I'm going to load this into my project. and you simply go off and you pick onto the points that you want, and it's going to create that shape based upon those 3 points. Again, I'll do it down here, and this will be a different shape. So you can see that adaptive components, we can do a lot of good stuff with them. And again, at the end of the Q&A, I have a couple pictures of some wild things that Autodesk did with the adaptive components that I haven't attempted yet, but it looks pretty cool and pretty radical. Okay. Let's close these up. All right, so analyze and visualization. We have a sun path simulation now, which takes on the position of your project, wherever you positioned your project, and you have the ability to directly manipulate where the sun is, what's going on, and get immediate feedback from that. So it's actually very cool. Something from Ecotech, I noticed, had that. And we have some new styles. So we have wireframe, hidden lines, shade with edges. We have consistent color, which is shade with edges without the shade. And then we have realistic, which is pretty close to being a render. Think about a medium render, if you will. And it doesn't take that much time to actually see that within the side of your view. Now, one of the benefits of the realistic one is it shows you your decal. So how many times have you placed a decal for a render and then realize after it took a couple hours or a couple days to render that, and it's in the wrong location or it didn't come through? This gives you the immediate feedback of what that decal is going to look like. And then we have some ambient lighting as well. Now on our rendering side of things, if you look at the top picture, that's kind of the old school render that we have. And the bottom picture is a background image. So think about if we wanted to do that bottom picture at the top, we'd add a bunch of trees and a bunch of stuff and just kind of heavy of our model. Now we have the ability to apply our background images. And then we have custom procedural textures that we're allowed to create based upon checkered patterns, wood, tile, gradient patterns as well. And then in 2010, when we were using the render, it was limited to 4 cores. And now in the 2011 version, it's limited to 16 cores. So I think you can get a pretty fast rendering if you have a 16-core machine. So let's take a quick look around that. So here's the sun one. Down at the bottom of our screen, I'm going to go and swap this over to be shade with edges. And then we have our sun. So I'm going to turn my sun path on. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my shadows on as well. Okay. And here's this little ball right here is your sun. You can pick it and you can drag this around. See what's going to look like. Let me rotate this around here. You can drag it backwards and forwards for time. It's not very user-friendly on a video and across the web. So think about this. I want to change the date. So right down here at the bottom of my screen it says April 30th, and I can go along and say, well, what does it look like today? Let's pick out my screen. It kind of rotates the information based upon today. And I want to see, well, what does it look like at 3:45 p.m. Anomically rotates that information there. So you can drag it, or you can change the information with specific dates and times. Very cool. All right, so our visual styles. Alright, so this is basically our hidden lines. So on this drop down we have shade with edges. So you should be able to see some shadows going inside the building there. And if I don't want to see that, then I can set up to be consistent colors, which gives me the edges of the information, which is something that I'm looking for. Or I can go off and do a realistic. Now realistic may take a little bit of time on our screen, but you can get immediate feedback on what materials you've assigned, what's going on with that, and also location of your decals. And this is a pretty good look and feel versus me having to spend a couple minutes rendering. And then if you look at the decals, look at the white ones that say Autodesk. You got that little cross across it. You're gonna that's something that you have to live with because it's a decal and it's not a render image. But I think I can live with that, especially how quick it was to create this. Then down under our shadows, we have our graphic display settings that we can set up our ambient information. We have direct, indirect lighting that we can set up, our sun intensity, we can do backgrounds. I'm going to go set this up to indirect lighting to be something like 37-ish. So when I say OK to that, you should see that the view gets a little bit brighter now. And if I want to set up a nice sky color, we'll do something nice and red so we can see what happens here. So you can see you can get some great look and feels of pictures without having to go through the process of rendering. All right. Get another file going here. Oops. So large team workflows. Done some great work here. I'm not through my testing stages with the whole thing, but I am seeing some very good promises to this. So link files and work set improvements. We have a new control under work sets now. It's a nice global control. So when we bring in things, do we want to see them globally or not globally? We have the ability now to apply view filters to linked files. We have a reconcile hosting dialog box. So when let's say I delete a door in a linked file, but I have a tag in my host file. How do I know that what's going on, what the tag is? I can set up colors and information about that now to look for them. And we no longer have the 2-mile limitation of importing or linking of files. So when you get that site file from your Civil 3D guy, we used to have to do a lot of things to get that 2-mile in, and now it's at 20 miles. So that's a great benefit for us when we're doing some great sites and campuses and such. Performance enhancements. Yes, the application does start faster. I didn't time it, but I can definitely see a big difference between 10 and 11. The biggest one is opening up models. We did a couple of testings here, and we did it on a 32-bit machine, 4 gigs of RAM, and a 32-bit machine with 2 gigs of RAM with a 250 megabyte file, and they were roughly about 3 minutes to open up, a little bit over 3 minutes to open up in 2010, and a little over a minute and a half in 2011. Now in a beefier machine, a 64-bit operating system, Windows 7, 8 gigs of RAM, that same file in 10 took 2 minutes to load, but in 2011 took less than a minute to load. So it was a great achievement there. And then to update it from 10 to 11 took about 12 minutes. So it does take a little bit of time to convert that 10 file to 11 file, but once you're there, you'll see a performance increase. Synchronizing with the central file, I haven't tested thoroughly yet, but really it's something you'll have to test on your network, because it's all network based and internet based and all that good stuff. So you have to figure out how it's best. But my understanding that it does do things faster. I'll just have to test a little bit more for myself here. And they haven't tested fully the linked files, but from what I've seen, it has increased the speed on that as well. And as you've seen today, hopefully that the user interface reaction time is faster, so some of that lagging information that we have with the ribbon, I believe is gone. Interoperability with Inventor files. You can start bringing in some more stuff. You still can't bring in very complex information, but you can still bring in this particular example, they've got a little staircase and stuff that you can bring in, but anything more complicated than that, then it kind of jokes on you. All right. All right, so down here at the bottom, remember, we have our work sets, and we have the ability to now set up the view in all views. So when I bring it in, do I want this particular work set to be shown up in all views or no or not? So when I say OK to that, you can see that there's the desk inside there. And if I swap over to my level 1 view, we should see some desks here as well. So if I pop back here and I say, well, don't show it in all views, what should happen is it should go away here. Now we have on the visibility graphics some controls of that as well. So when I come over here to the work set tab, we have our work sets, and right now it says how we're going to use that globally. So I'm going to go and say, let's go ahead and just show this in this particular view. So even though it says don't show it in all views, we can say in this particular view, go ahead and show those. So you can see it there, and then when I pop over here to my 3D house view, there we go, you won't see them there. So that's kind of a nice improvement to the flow here. And then as far as our filters go, right here I have a filter set up for usage. So we have a comment of reuse this particular one. So when I go into my visibility graphics, under my filters, you'll see I've got doors and nice big fat red lines. I'm going to go and turn on my link here that I had off. And I'm sure that there are some doors in here that actually are called out to be reused. So under my visibility graphics again, I go to my Revit links tab, I hit my custom section, and we have a new area called view filters that I can set up and say view the host, or if there was other linked files that had filters, I could use those as well. So I'll go and say OK to this all the way out, and now I can see the filter being applied. So I think some great little features there can help us in our workflow issues that we're having. And these are just kind of some things that I put together that, and Eugene's thoughts. It's about time. Make sure I turn it on so I'm not going to worry about it. Right, so short key cuts. I mean, how many times in class have I been asked, how do I modify the short key file and where's it at? Now we have a dialog box that allows us to go off and do that. Temporary dimension display. I'm getting old, I'll admit it, and I can't see those texts. It's pretty tiny. So now we have the ability to boost that information up, and it's in the project as well as a family. And then this one is near and dear to me. How many times have you changed the location of a dimension, and then when you go back and pick that item again, you'd have to go back and rechange it? Well, now it remembers it for this particular session. Right-click, instance, visible in view or entire project. So how many times you wanted to grab an item in this view and all the items in this view only, not the entire project. So now it's going to do that. Now the caveat to this is it's what's visible. So you have to make sure that all the items are visible. So if you have something that you right-clicked and said hide in view, it's not going to grab that one, just the ones that are visible. Related dimensions, this is great for your family creation. So typically when we wanted to find out what things were related, we go to the type box, we look in there and see where things were related, what form has been created. Now we just simply pick the dimension and say, well, is there anything else related to it? And the ability to flex the model on the screen without having to flex it in the type dialog box is huge in my opinion. And then this is kind of an about time for sure. I mean, custom tags, how many people have wanted this for years and years and years? And then I threw these out there, kind of the find and replace one is a nice one. But the duh ones, I think maybe the elevation tag can go under duh. But tagging across linked files, I mean, since we can't right now have the technology to put everything in the big file, especially like a skyscraper, you know, be able to tag these across files is huge. And then consistent materials. Think about this. Think about all of the Autodesk products that are out there, and they all have their own material libraries. Now we have consistent libraries through AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, and 3D Studios. So if I go off and I send my file to somebody that's using 3D Studio Max, that time that they're spending remapping the materials is no longer there because we're using the same materials. The only caveat to that is Navisworks does not use the same materials yet. So that's that one product BIM solution that doesn't do it. And this last one I kind of found out through going through my classes, deleting AutoCAD layers in an imported file. What I mean by that is when you bring in an AutoCAD file, you sketch on top of it, you delete it. Well, then you have to go to the object styles box and delete all of those layers that came with it. Now you don't. So all you have to do is just delete the AutoCAD file, and anything that imported from that gets deleted as well. All right, so a couple things to show you here. Tagging across linked files. So I'm going to go over to my tag option here. I'm going to tag all. And we have a nice little option right here. It says include elements from linked file. So I can tag doors. What I can't tag right now, the only thing that I found so far that we cannot tag is the rooms across linked files, but everything else seems to be working pretty good. So I'll go doors, and it went off and it tagged it across it. Now I'm going to go and make a change here to this door. I'm actually going to delete this particular door here. So I'm going to go and open that one. And just delete it. Close and save it. Okay, so back here in my project, I'm going to go ahead and reload that. And I'll get a nice little warning about, hey, something got deleted from the host. But if I ignore that, how am I going to know where that thing is? So what I have now under our Manage tab, Collaboration tab, we have Reconcile Hosting. So when I pick that, it gives me a nice little dialog box that kind of shows me the information, but I can also set up graphic information as well. So I really want this to be red, and I really want it to be fat, so it stands out no matter what's going on in my file. So now I can see visually that there's an issue with anything that particular color fat. So I can go look and see what's going on there. I think that's kind of a nice little feature. Shortcut keys. A couple things I didn't mention about the ribbon as well, and we'll get to that when we do the shortcuts, is when you do the ribbon, when you pick an item, remember it pops over to modify and swaps back after you're done. You can set the way you want that to work or not work. So if you go over here to the options command, you have the ability under user interface to set up how you want your environment to work when it comes to the modify tab. Once you pick something and you're done, you want it to return to the previous tab, and it's for project as well as for family editor. And then up on top here we have shortcut keys, which allows me to go off and create my own keys. I can search based upon the tabs, or I can type in a name and look for a name. And down here, just give it a DD, hit the assignment. And anytime we do shortcuts, it's an immediate thing. So all I need to do is just pop back out, DD, and I'm off dimensioning. Alright, so looking at this again, this is kind of small for me. So I'm going to go back to my options command, and then under the graphics tab, we have the size for a temporary dimension appearance. So I can set that up to anywhere from 8 to 20, and then I can go from transparent to opaque, and I can actually see that. Now again, this affects all of it, so it's a system environment. And if I go off and I change that dimension location over to here, next I come back and pick that wall, I want that to be remembered. And again, it's going to remember that now in this project, in this file, until I close it and get back into it today or tomorrow. So it's something that's here and now. It's not something that will last forever. Okay. I'm going to create an elevation tag just so you can kind of see the process on how that works, because it's a multi-step process. So first thing is family, and under family you're going to go to the annotation tab, and then you have elevation mark pointer. So you have two, a body and a pointer, and this is just that text saying you need to delete this when you're done. So I'm going to go a little closer here, and I'm not going to be anything too spectacular for lack of time here. So once we have a pointer, all we need to do is to save that. Okay. And then we go off and we create a new one. And this will be the body. And again, what you're going to do is you're going to draw that as well. I'm going to go ahead and just open up one that I've already created here so you can see it. Okay, so basically what I've done was brought in that pointer, picked it, and just kind of rotated it around. So these are all the spots that it's going to be. And if you wanted to, of course, you're going to add your labels and things of that nature. And then what we do is just load that into your project. And then once you have it in here, there's a two-step process as well. We come over here to the Manage tab. We set additional settings, and we grab elevation tags. And then we need to create one for this particular one. So I'm going to go and say duplicate this one, and we'll call this one Demo. And OK. Oop, before OK, we need to assign the one that we've created. And then we come over to View. Create an elevation, and of course we need to create the new tag for that. So again, we're going to go and say duplicate that one, and this will be Demo. And we're going to use our demo one that we just got done creating. So now we can see that it's nice and pretty there. And again, each one of these has a little elevation view. And if I look in my browser now, you have elevation interior and then demo, so you'll find that now underneath what's going on. And this is kind of one of the reasons why it took so long for them to actually having to create one, because it's actually creating views, and based upon views it's doing certain things. So it took a while for them to get there, but it looks like it's a pretty good tool now. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the family changes, family editor changes for dimensions. So again, remember that we would typically go over here to the type dialog box, look for relationships, and I have one right here that length is width. And if I wanted to flex the model, I would come here and say, well, make this one 6, which makes that 3, and so forth. Okay. Well, the first thing I can do now in this environment is pick this dimension, and then we have a nice little button up on top here that says related dimensions. And when I do that, it's going to highlight in orange, in this case, those dimensions that are related. So that's a great benefit without having to go to the box and look and see. But we can also grab information and adjust it. So I can take this and stretch it or flex it in the model. And by flexing, you can see what things are related as well. I mean, that's just huge to be able to adjust that. And the last thing is I can actually pick onto the dimension itself and say, well, I really want that to be 6 feet. And that'll go off and flex it as well without me having to go to the dialog box and make that change. So great improvements when it comes to the flexing of our models and families. All right, so the last thing is this a special note on the subscription and the Advantage pack. When you have subscription now for 2011, you're getting the ability now to use the Green Building Studios web-based service for our data information and carbon information and LEED certification stuff. So that's kind of a benefit. In the past, what you had to do is get Ecotech or purchase it. Now it's part of the subscription package. So I just wanted to mention that for everybody. And then Q&A time. And remember I told you about the adaptive components? These are 2 things using that adaptive technology. And the one down at the bottom is actually trusses. So with that, we're going to open up for questions. And again, remember *6 to unmute for your question. Anybody? *6 to unmute, sorry. Yep. Hey, Michael. I'll have to look at that and see. Yeah, I'll have to check that and see. Let me write that one down. I'll get back to you on that one. So the question, go ahead. Yes. Yeah, so the question, folks, if you didn't hear it, is about indexing of the schedule and sorting that information out. Is that correct, Michael? Okay. Any other questions? Any comments, thoughts? Anybody want to say it's about time on any particular items? Hmm? Yes. No. I'm not sure what you're asking. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, yeah. Right. Yeah, so the question is about elevation tags and template files, and the answer is if you create a custom tag, you can have that as part of your template, and that will be the default one, or can be the default one. Any other questions? There's got to be some more out there. Got to be. Is Jason there with you? Because he had a couple system requirements questions. Mm-hmm. That I haven't tested yet. So the question is, can I create fields within inside of the sheets, the sheet list? And I'm going to say it's going to act as like a regular schedule, but I haven't tested that piece out yet because it really is just a schedule. All you're doing is adding. Kind of think of it like a key schedule, if you will. All right, folks, if you have any more questions, we're going to wrap it up for the day. Thanks for joining us, and if you have any questions, you can give me a buzz at our office here and or send me an email. We'll talk to you later. Great. Thanks, folks.